we are here to talk about the Oscar-nominated film American Fiction through the lens of an artist who works on the project. She is a frequent contributor to Vogue. She has collaborated with Gucci, Salon Magazine, and the New York Times. Isabella Cotier. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I think so. I've never really thought about how to say my last name. Cotier.
Yeah.
It's like Americans say Cotier.
Oh, boy. We're getting dragged already for the action. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. You commissioned the artwork in the opening credits for American Fiction.
I mean, so I didn't commission the illustrations. I was commissioned to do the illustrations. Does that make sense?
Yes. And that is my...
but just... No. I was just like...
Correct me at every turn.
No, I just don't know that I'm even correcting you. So I worked on this project with Claude during the summer, and it's all kind of come out recently, and it has been just so exciting seeing it all happen. All of this, it's just blown up, and it's just I saw a poster of American Fiction on the Underground, and it was just whoa,
Right.
I mean, when I did this project, I was so I loved the movie so much when I watched it for the first time that quite frankly, I was just so honored to be a part of the project, of the film, even if it didn't have all this success. It was just it just had such an incredible energy to it when I first watched it. So yeah, to be a part of it is really exciting for me.
Yeah. And I'm curious about, what the timeline was. Can you sort of walk me through how that collaboration happened?
So the timeline, I mean, my memory is terrible, but I remember that it was during the summer. And so I got an email from the producer being is this the type of project you would take on? And I was like, absolutely. Because do you remember seeing the show True Detective, the first season?
Oh, I didn't watch it, but I've seen an episode here and there.
So there's the first season of True Detective, and it has the best intro ever. And I remember thinking I wasn't even sure how much I liked the show at the beginning, but I was just so invested in watching the intro because it set this really eerie tone, and it was just so well done. And I remember thinking I would love to work on a project like that where it kind of is an intro into a film. I thought that was just such a unique way for people to see your work, your artwork. So yeah, when I got the email, I was like, absolutely, I would love to. And so it came about that Claude saw my illustrations on Instagram. Weirdly enough, it was so crazy. It was actually a animation. I was experimenting with animation at the time. And I had done this animation that was kind of I guess an animator later said to me that he thought it was super unfinished, and I was like, oops, I thought it was finished. Anyway, I just put it out there, and it was actually that unfinished animation that he really liked, and so yeah, I really believe in just putting your stuff out there, even if you think it's finished or not, because it's you just never know what can come of things, and one person might think it's amazing and someone else thinks it's absolute crap. So yeah,
everything isn't for everyone, but that doesn't mean it's not great.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think they had an original credits that Corda wasn't happy with. And so then he got me to come in.
Oh, he went digging on Instagram and said, let me find something. Let me find somebody. And he found you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Also, what a time that we're living in. Like you said, put your stuff out there and you never know what's going to happen.
I know. It's a funny one, isn't it? Because it's people kind of hate on Instagram a lot, you know? People are it's a toxic app. And I think there are aspects of it that, a lot of people can find toxic, of course. But there's also like, you can just post whatever and there's no filter. And that's something that's super exciting to me because a lot of the time, it's selective what gets put out there and it's people deciding what's out there, what's not out there. So it's kind of cool to like be your own boss in that way and kind of like just be like, oh, I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah. And I mean, even still, you are kind of at the whim of what those apps like Instagram and TikTok decide to put in front of people. Like you can put something out, but they have to decide to put it on the For You page or, whatever you're seeing. So a lot of it is also chance.
Totally.
I'm curious, you talked about how honored you were to be a part of it just because you liked the movie. I really loved the movie as well. What parts of it sort of resonated with how you describe yourself as an artist?
Well, I think the movie has lots of different themes. And I think like the main theme that kind of stuck out for me was like the main character Monk. He kind of has this like rebellious nature to him. And it's very kind of like anti-authority, which I love. I think it's just like, it's kind of that thing of like going back to like your school days of just like, you're in this classroom and you have this teacher telling you absolutely everything that you have to do and how you have to behave. And it's like, who is this guy? And I just still, and then that kind of just goes into your adulthood where it's just like, your bosses at work or like when you work in, I was working a shop job and then you have like people, there's all these like hierarchies of like people telling you how to behave. And I just can't stand that. And so there was certainly this like, play on that in the movie, which I absolutely loved. And he was just like so angry, but kind of like the main character Monk. He has this like rage, but he's just kind of like getting on with it because he's just like, yeah, that's just how it is and that sucks. But he's highly creative. And I just, there was a lot of themes of struggling with creativity. And I suppose like that can be interesting as well, just like obviously like the plays on like stereotypes and like society deciding for you what you're meant to be when you're not that.
Right.
I think that resonates with a lot of people as well. And just, I suppose also there's a theme of dysfunctional family dynamics in it. I don't want to say the word dysfunctional, but maybe unusual family dynamics. And I think that resonates with a lot of people. I don't believe in normal families. I think everyone has something. And that's just, all these themes are just, they're just such a gold mine when it comes to like creating imagery, That is certainly a lot. That's like certainly a lot of themes that I like to tackle in my work already. So super exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the dysfunctional family aspect was such a theme, sort of on a theme, because I felt like the movie was about the ways that a lot of times, Black stories that we tell don't get to just be about people living. It has to be about a very specific type of life or struggle or whatever. And so within the movie, you're seeing, just a normal, not even normal, but like a regular amount of dysfunction in a family, a Black family living life.
And then, but also highlighting the kind of like, you can have this, I like to say unusual family dynamic, but then it's this idea of family and there's always these moments of tenderness as well. And I thought that Cord really like managed to get those. And it was really, I don't know, it touched me.
Yeah. And so when you got, when they commissioned you to do the pieces, I got that right? Right. Okay.
Yeah.
What exactly was, I'm curious, like what the assignment was. Like what were the parameters and how did it go from there?
Yeah, because that was interesting because I was like, oh, are they just going to kind of want portraits of each actor's, kind of like a portrait next to the name or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Cord was just like, no, I want to just create imagery that captures the essence of the characters within the film.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can be pretty broad, but I just felt like it was so crazy. Like I did I watched the movie, and then we had a talk, so with the team and Cord, and we were kind of discussing the films and like different themes that are in the film. And Cord is just so incredible at talking. Like he just started saying these words, these descriptive words, and I was like, oh my God, that's like that. He would just say a word, and I was like, that's a drawing. He doesn't even realize it, but that's a drawing. And so like so those like we would just do it in batches. So it was like I think there was like maybe 4 batches that we did. And in between, I would sit down with Cord and he would describe to me each character, like how he envisioned them, how he saw them, like, and yeah, I mean, some characters literally he would say 2 words, and then there was a drawing that came from that, and it was just, that was pretty cool. Really, it was a very unusual way for me to work because there was no visual references except for the film, but obviously you can't really take too much from the film. You have to create your own. So that was interesting.
Right. I think maybe now we should I'm going to pull them up and then we can just kind of go through. This is the first one you see in the film, which already says a lot, I think.
Why do you say that? Like, what do you see with that? I'm curious.
I see I
put you on the
a
spot,
broken
sorry.
pencil is like, ooh, I'm frustrated, baby. Like,
Yeah.
I am over it. But then you also have these characters like jumping off the page. That's what that's giving me.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, the film, I think Monk, I mentioned before that he's going through this battle of like frustration of like with his creativity. And I think the pencil snapping was kind of that moment of like frustration. And in that moment of snapping, he kind of actually just lets go. And it's that idea that when you let go, actually, like it's sometimes like the most subconscious kind of like creative things that come out of letting go that can work really well. And so it was that idea of like letting go. That was the house.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, so that was the house that was in the seaside house.
Oh, this is the seaside house.
Yeah, so that's the seaside house where his father committed suicide.
A detail that like escapes my memory when I'm thinking about the film, but it was like a thing that kept coming up over it. It was a pretty big deal.
Oh, the dad killing himself. Yeah, he shot himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, because that's something that I feel like people kind of quite often forget about in the film, is that it's also a kind of it's a film about grieving and loss.
Mm-hmm.
And, we'll get to that with Leslie Ugam's card, but, his father passed away and then his mother is starting to like get dementia and losing her memory. So it's, Monk's going through a lot. And obviously his sister has just passed.
His sister. I was gagged when that happened. I was like, there's no way. We're like 25 minutes into this movie.
I was really thrown off by that, I have to say.
I was like, how dare you? And something about the sort of like funeral scene at the beach. Like they were all dressed in black. Like it was very somber, but I don't know why it took me so long to register. I was like, oh, this is a funeral. I was like, that's crazy to me.
Because, actually, Cord, he said that. So, also there was in the original book that the movie's based on. So that the character played by Tracy Ellis Ross, the sister, she was a Planned Parent. She worked at Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
And in the book, she was actually shot by kind of a person from a protester.
Oh, far more political.
Wow. Well, yeah, I guess so. But I thought that was an interesting kind of like, whoa, that's yeah. I always find it fascinating what kind of jumps up to people and what doesn't. So, I mean, with this illustration, her character, she worked at Planned Parenthood, so she cared for people. She was a carer for women, and she had to look after her mom massively, a lot. She was a caretaker. But then you kind of get this idea of her like in the car, and she's just like started smoking again, and there's just this idea that like she looks after everyone else but herself. And I kind of wanted to highlight that in the imagery by just being like, you know, she was obviously really tough, but very tender in the center. And yeah, she was vulnerable in that sense. But, and that's where the cigarette came from.
Yeah. It is interesting too how like Monk was sort of forced to take on the more sort of caretaker role and kind of got a dose of what he and his brother had been like towards Tracy Ellis Ross's character as like, oh, I'm busy, I'm over here, I'm doing my thing, I don't have money, I can't help, etc., etc.
I know.
So,
and she was coping with all that.
Yeah.
It's like to a certain extent, I feel like she was taken for granted a little bit by the brothers, and I feel like a lot of the time that does happen in like sibling dynamics. The kind of like the girl of the family kind of gets like burdened with all this responsibility, and then all the guys kind of are like, okay.
Yeah. There is a greater expectation, I think, of men or boys to like do create or produce work where women, sort of stereotypically have more of a caretaker responsibility.
Yeah, but she was doing both.
She was doing both.
That's a lot. That's like, that's not fair.
That's not
it's like,
fair.
What's the difference between her and Monk? Like, I've got a bone to pick with Monk on that one. So,
Ooh.
But he got a taste, at the end of the day, he then was like, oh, okay.
He did get a taste of it.
Gosh, there's so much to say about his character, I find. Like, it's just, as I said, like this idea, I wanted to play with this idea of him being so enraged, but also kind of like coping and going along with like people's kind of ideas of what he was. And I had this idea in my head of him just being this kind of like zombie, but kind of like going along with the machine of it all because he didn't have a choice. And so that turned into a meat grinder. And him going through a meat grinder.
Which is a bit vulgar. My friend can't even walk.
I guess so.
Yeah. He's
turned into meat sauce. So this was supposed to be Cord's card, so kind of like directed by Cord, but I feel like I can't remember which image ended up getting used for his. But this was just that idea of like, because, talking to Cord and just like him being so incredible with words, it's like his words would just start to take a life of their own. So I wanted to play with that idea and just like have like these pieces of paper and these words kind of just going off into the world because they've like created a life of their own. So this was the agent's character.
Right.
And I guess the lettuce represents money and the book is the creativity. And it's that kind of balancing act of like making money from creativity. A lot of people like have lots of opinions about this, that maybe the two can't go hand in hand. I think I don't believe that. I think there are loads of creatives out there that can make a living out of it and it's still incredible work. But I think Monk really struggled with that. Like he felt as if like, if you start, I think he kind of had a chip on his shoulder about sellouts.
Right. Which I think was...
Whereas the agent...
Yeah, very well represented with Issa Rae's character.
Exactly.
Do you feel a difference when you are doing illustrations or drawing for leisure as opposed to when you're doing it for work?
Now I'm at a point where I can definitely like, I'm not really commissioned work or personal projects. I have found a way to kind of enjoy both of them the same amount.
Good.
And, if with commissioned work, I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm bogged down by like deadlines or whatnot. It's like, I have just found different kind of like strategies to get myself out of that, whether it be like life drawing or like doing like courses or just like doing lots of personal projects on the side, just to like kind of like keep myself like fresh in it.
Right.
And just so I make sure that I don't get like stale. And also it's just that idea of like, I'm always collecting ideas as I go along of like imagery that I like or drawings of like, something that I think is interesting. So when it does come to the commission work, it's actually like, I'm not just like, oh, I need to find things in my brain out of nothing. It's like, oh no, there's already stuff there that I actually already wanted to play with. And I bring that into like the personal work and the commissioned work. So it's kind of like, but yeah, that's taken me a while to to get to that point.
Yeah. Something you mentioned earlier that you found as a theme in the movie is actually sort of struggling with the creative process. Is that something that you can speak about from experience? Are there any moments where you felt yourself struggling?
I mean, at the beginning, everything's a struggle in that sense. Like, it's just so challenging. Like, people don't want to pay you. You're kind of having to just, juggle other jobs. So, yeah, of course it's a struggle. I just remember like, so I work like miniature. So all these drawings are like this size. And that's because I produce a lot of drawings like constantly, like hundreds, like within a week.
Oh, wow.
And so I just remember like university and school, they were always like, you have to draw like large scale, like A1 or whatever. And I was like, oh, yeah, just going along with what they said. Because I was like, they're teachers, they really must know, you respect what teachers are telling you. But then I live in London and it's like, I don't know about you, but like, I was having to like move 8 times in 1 year because rent is so crazy here. And I was lugging around these A1 portfolios in these tiny rooms, just like sandwiched like in between drawings. And I was like, this is not working for me like at all. So I was just like, I like threw out. It's just like, so I ended up just throwing away all those A1 portfolios because I was so irritated by them.
Yeah.
And I started drawing miniature because I wanted to figure out a way, I was working in like restaurant jobs and pub jobs, and I worked in retail for a really long time. And, you have to kind of balance that. It's a constant balancing act of kind of like having the job that brought in the money and then also like working towards what you really wanted to do. So, working miniature allowed me to work on my lunch break or, before work or after work, it's just kind of brought a looseness to the drawings as well because it was like on the go. So it wasn't like, oh, you have to stay like at your desk and working. It was like, oh, I can create work like wherever I need to create work.
In some ways, it's a practical thing.
It was quite practical, actually.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's part of it. You need the practical stuff in a way that's easy for you. It makes the creative part like more possible. So I'm curious, like how long have you been doing these illustrations, and how long was it before you felt like you kind of got over the hump, or like people really started to notice you and take you seriously?
Well, I went into doing like camera assisting at like London Fashion Weeks, and I kind of like learned how to draw like super fast. Like, so I would draw like at the fashion weeks and I was constantly uploading to my website, just like whatever I was doing.